Federal agents, open the door right now.
You have a warrant? I'm an attorney.
Look, we have immigration authority. We're coming in.
I'm a citizen. You have no authority here.
Open this door or we take it down.
Show a warrant or get out my house now.
What should have been a quiet Saturday morning in her suburban Phoenix home turned into a constitutional nightmare that would cost the federal government over $10 million. Elena Ramirez, a 38-year-old civil rights attorney who had spent her career defending others against government overreach, never imagined she would become the victim. But when 4 federal agents forced their way into her home without a warrant, detained her in her own living room, and subjected her to hours of interrogation based on nothing more than an anonymous tip and racial profiling, they ignited a legal battle that would expose systematic violations of constitutional rights and reshape how immigration enforcement operates in residential settings. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Elena Ramirez had built her career on principles. She graduated from Georgetown University Law Center, clerked for a federal judge, then joined a nonprofit legal organization defending immigrants' rights and challenging unconstitutional police practices. After 10 years of courtroom battles, she'd opened her own practice in Phoenix, taking on cases other attorneys wouldn't touch: police misconduct, illegal searches, civil rights violations. She knew the Constitution backward and forward, could recite Fourth Amendment case law from memory, and had never lost an illegal search case. Her reputation was built on being uncompromising, fearless, and brilliant. She lived alone in a modest 2-story house in a diverse Phoenix neighborhood, the kind of place where families of all backgrounds lived side by side, where kids played in the streets, and neighbors knew each other's names. She had installed a video doorbell 6 months earlier, mostly for package deliveries, never imagining it would capture evidence that would become central to a federal lawsuit. Saturday, June 17, 2023, started like any other weekend morning. Elena woke up at 8:30 a.m. to sunlight streaming through her bedroom windows, made coffee in her kitchen while reviewing case files for Monday's hearing, and settled onto her couch in comfortable sweats and a Georgetown Law t-shirt. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, the kind of suburban morning where the biggest concern was whether to mow the lawn or run errands first. At 9:47 a.m., her doorbell camera detected motion. 4 men in tactical vests approached her front door, their movements quick and coordinated. The camera captured everything in crystal clear high definition: their faces, their equipment, the patches on their vests reading ICE in bold yellow letters. Immigration and Customs Enforcement at a private home on a Saturday morning. Lead agent Brian Miller rang the doorbell, then immediately began pounding on the door with his fist. Bang, bang, bang. The sound echoed through Elena's house, aggressive and intimidating. She jumped up from the couch, her legal instincts immediately alert. Something was wrong. This wasn't a friendly visit. She walked to the door but didn't open it. Instead, she spoke through the closed door, her voice firm and clear. Every word captured by the doorbell camera's audio. Who is it? Federal agents? Miller shouted back, his voice carrying authority and impatience. Open the door now. Elena's mind raced through Fourth Amendment case law, immigration enforcement protocols, constitutional protections. Do you have a warrant? She called through the door. I'm an attorney. I know my rights. You cannot enter without a warrant. The doorbell camera captured Miller's face, his expression shifting from authoritative to annoyed. Ma'am, we have authority under immigration enforcement. We received information that you're harboring undocumented individuals. Open this door, or we're coming in. Elena felt a surge of anger mixed with professional outrage. Harboring undocumented individuals. She lived alone. She had no roommates, no family staying with her, no one but herself. This was clearly a mistake, or worse, a targeted harassment of a civil rights attorney who had made enemies by suing federal agencies. I'm a United States citizen, she said loudly, making sure the camera caught every word. I live alone. There are no undocumented individuals here. You have no authority to enter my home. Show me a warrant or leave my property. The 3 other agents visible on the doorbell camera exchanged glances. Agent Sarah Jenkins, the only woman in the group, shifted uncomfortably. Agent David Chen checked his phone, presumably looking at whatever information had brought them to this address. Agent Michael Barnes, the largest of the 4, moved to the side of the door, positioning himself near the frame. Ma'am, we have credible information about illegal activity at this address, Miller said, his voice rising. We're entering on suspicion of harboring undocumented individuals. Step back from the door. This is illegal, Elena shouted, her attorney voice coming out in full force. The doorbell camera captured the intensity in her tone, the righteous anger of someone who knew exactly what constitutional violations were about to occur. I'm recording everything. You're violating the Fourth Amendment. The Supreme Court has been clear that immigration enforcement does not give you authority to enter a private residence without a warrant or exigent circumstances. You have neither. Should federal agents be required to obtain warrants before entering private homes, even in immigration cases? Comment below, because what happened next proved that knowing the law doesn't protect you when agents decide to violate it. Anyway, Miller made a decision that would cost him his career and the federal government millions of dollars. He nodded to Barnes, who moved to the door with a breaching tool, a heavy metal ram designed to force entry. The doorbell camera captured everything. Barnes raising the ram the moment of impact, the door frame splintering as the lock gave way. Elena screams from inside as 4 armed federal agents forced their way into her home. "Get back! Get back!" Miller shouted as they poured through the broken doorway. Elena had backed up into her living room, her hands raised, her phone in one hand recording video. "This is illegal entry. I did not consent. You have no warrant. I'm an attorney. I know my rights." "Hands where we can see them." Barnes commanded, his hand on his weapon, though he didn't draw it. "My hands are up. I'm not resisting, but you need to know you're violating the Fourth Amendment." Elena's voice was strong despite the fear she felt, her legal training overriding her natural panic. "The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. You forced entry into a private residence without a warrant, without consent, and without exigent circumstances. Everything you're doing right now is illegal." Jenkins moved through the house, checking rooms, her body camera recording the search of Elena's home. The footage would later show a typical single woman's residence. One bedroom with a neatly made bed, a bathroom with toiletries and towels, a home office with law books and case files, a kitchen with breakfast dishes in the sink. No evidence of anyone else living there. No undocumented immigrants. No illegal activity. Just a private citizen's home being violated by federal agents. Chen was checking Elena's identification, her driver's license, her State Bar of Arizona attorney card, her passport. All of them clearly showing she was Elena Marie Ramirez, born in Tucson, Arizona, a United States citizen with no criminal record, and an active license to practice law. "Ma'am, we need you to sit down," Miller said, gesturing to her couch. "I will not sit down in my own home while you illegally search it," Elena said, her voice shaking now with rage more than fear. "You forced entry without a warrant. You're conducting an illegal search. Every second you remain here is another violation of my constitutional rights." "We received credible information," Miller started. "Credible information isn't a warrant," Elena cut him off. "The Fourth Amendment is clear. The right of the people to be secure in their persons' houses, papers and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause. You have no warrant. You have no probable cause. You have no consent. You are violating my Fourth Amendment rights right now." The doorbell camera, still recording from the broken front door, captured neighbors gathering on the sidewalk, drawn by the commotion. An elderly black man, Mr. Henderson from next door, was on his phone, presumably calling police. A young Latina mother across the street was recording on her cell phone, her children behind her, watching with wide eyes. The suburban Saturday morning had turned into a spectacle of federal overreach. Jenkins emerged from the back of the house, her camera showing she'd found nothing. "House is clear," she reported to Miller. "No one else here. No evidence of additional occupants." Miller's jaw tightened, visible on Chen's body camera as he turned toward his supervisor. The implication was clear. They had forced their way into an innocent woman's home based on faulty information. "Ma'am, we're going to need to verify your citizenship status," Miller said, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. "My citizenship status." Elena's voice rose to a shout. "I've shown you my passport. I've shown you my driver's license. I've told you I'm an attorney licensed by the state of Arizona, which requires citizenship. What more verification do you need? Standard procedure? There is no standard procedure that allows you to break into someone's home without a warrant." Elena was pacing now, her phone still recording her other hand, gesturing emphatically. "You know what is standard procedure? The Fourth Amendment warrants due process constitutional rights, all of which you violated." Chen was on his phone, speaking quietly to someone, presumably their supervisor. His body camera captured fragments of the conversation. "Negative on subjects? Yes, she's a citizen attorney. Yes, she's very vocal about Fourth Amendment. Considerable damage to front door neighbors recording." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. What was supposed to be a quick immigration enforcement action based on an anonymous tip had turned into a public relations nightmare captured on multiple cameras, with a civil rights attorney who knew exactly how to articulate every constitutional violation in real time. Miss Ramirez, Jenkins said, her voice softer than the others, attempting de-escalation. I understand you're upset. Upset? Elena turned to face her. I'm a civil rights attorney. I spend my career defending people against exactly this kind of unconstitutional government action. And now I'm experiencing it in my own home. Yes, I'm upset. I'm also documenting every single violation for the federal lawsuit I'm going to file the moment you leave. The words hung in the air. Federal lawsuit. Every agent in the room understood the implications. They had forced entry into the home of an attorney who specialized in suing federal agencies for constitutional violations. An attorney who was currently recording everything, who had doorbell footage, who had witnesses, and who clearly knew exactly what legal action to take. Miller made a decision. We're leaving. Chen called for a supervisor to meet us outside. He looked at Elena, his expression a mixture of defensiveness and the beginning of concern. Miss Ramirez, you'll be receiving documentation about this incident. I'll be receiving a lot more than documentation, Elena said coldly. I'll be receiving a formal apology from your agency, a full investigation into how this happened, and eventually a substantial settlement check after I sue you, this agency, and everyone who authorized this violation of my rights. The agents filed out through her broken front door, the doorbell camera capturing their exit. Neighbors were still gathered on the sidewalk phones out recording. Mr. Henderson approached as the agents left. Elena, are you okay? I called the police. I'm fine, Mr. Henderson, Elena said, stepping out onto her porch, surveying her broken door, her face a mask of controlled fury. But these federal agents just learned a very expensive lesson about the Fourth Amendment. The agents drove away in their black SUVs, leaving Elena standing in her doorway. Her home violated her sense of security, shattered but her resolve hardening. She went back inside, immediately backed up all her recordings to cloud storage, downloaded the doorbell footage showing the entire incident, and began making phone calls. Her first call was to her colleague, Daniel Vance, a federal civil rights attorney with 20 years of experience. Daniel, I need you to represent me. Federal agents just broke into my home without a warrant. Yes, really? I have it all on video. Fourth Amendment violation, illegal search, false detention, the whole package. I want to file within the week. Her second call was to the media. By evening, local news stations were running stories. Federal agents break into Phoenix attorney's home without warrant. Civil rights lawyer says ICE violated Fourth Amendment. The doorbell footage went viral online. Millions of views showing federal agents forcing entry, while Elena shouted about constitutional violations from behind the door. Her third call was to her mother, who cried when Elena described what happened, then got angry, then got determined. You sue them, baby. You sue them for every penny. Your daddy would be so proud of you standing up like that. But suing the federal government isn't quick or easy. Elena and Daniel spent months building their case. Elena Ramirez versus United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Agent Brian Miller, Agent Michael Barnes, Agent Sarah Jenkins, and Agent David Chen. The complaint was 63 pages long, alleging violations of the Fourth Amendment, illegal search and seizure, false detention trespass, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and deprivation of rights under color of law. The evidence was overwhelming. The doorbell camera showed Elena clearly stating she was a citizen, clearly refusing consent, clearly explaining the Fourth Amendment requirements, and clearly telling the agents their entry would be illegal. It showed the agents forcing entry anyway. The agent's own body cameras showed the search of her home, finding nothing. Showed Chen verifying her citizenship. Showed the realization that they had made a catastrophic error. The government's initial response was predictable. They claimed qualified immunity, argued the agents had acted in good faith based on information they received, and offered $75,000 to settle. Daniel laughed when he read the offer. They broke into a civil rights attorney's home without a warrant on camera while she cited the Fourth Amendment. And they think $75,000 will make this go away. The case went to trial 14 months after the incident. The federal courtroom in Phoenix was packed with attorneys, civil rights advocates, and members of the community who saw Elena's case as their own fight against government overreach. Elena testified for an entire day, walking the jury through every moment, hearing the pounding on her door, asserting her rights, explaining the Fourth Amendment, the terror of hearing her door being broken, down the violation of watching strangers search through her private space. I teach Fourth Amendment law. She told the jury, her voice steady but emotional. I've argued it in court dozens of times. I've explained to clients why they're protected, why the government can't just break into your home, why warrants matter, And then I had to experience the government ignoring all of that, breaking down my door, while I stood there explaining why they couldn't. It wasn't just a violation of my rights. It was a violation of everything I've dedicated my career to protecting. Daniel called constitutional law experts who testified that the agents had no legal justification for their entry. Professor Robert Sterling from ASU Law School was particularly devastating. The Fourth Amendment's protection of the home is at the core of our constitutional rights. The Supreme Court has consistently held that the home receives maximum protection under the Fourth Amendment. Immigration enforcement does not give agents a blank check to enter homes without warrants. Ms. Ramirez was correct in every statement she made to those agents. They were wrong, and they knew it, or should have known it. The government tried to argue they had received information suggesting criminal activity, but under cross-examination, their case collapsed. The credible information turned out to be an anonymous phone call claiming someone at Elena's address was harboring undocumented immigrants. No specifics, no corroboration, no verification, just an anonymous tip that agents used as justification to break into a private home. "You didn't verify the tip before forcing entry," Daniel asked Miller on the stand. "We believed it was credible," Miller replied. "Based on what made an anonymous phone call credible enough to violate the Fourth Amendment, we have to follow up on all tips in immigration enforcement by breaking down doors without warrants. That's your position, that any anonymous phone call justifies forcing entry into an American citizen's home." Miller had no good answer. The jury saw it. The judge saw it. Everyone in the courtroom saw it. When the government's attorneys tried to show that Elena's home had been restored, that the door had been fixed, Daniel destroyed that argument in closing. They broke her door. Yes, they fixed the door. Sure, but they can't fix the violation of her constitutional rights. They can't fix the terror she felt. They can't fix the knowledge that the government she's sworn to respect, whose constitution she's dedicated her career to upholding, violated her in the most fundamental way. You can't fix that with a new door. The jury deliberated for 11 hours over 2 days. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous on all counts. The damages phase took another week of testimony about Elena's emotional trauma, her fear in her own home, her damaged sense of security, the professional impact of being publicly raided by federal agents. When the jury announced their decision, the courtroom erupted in applause that the judge didn't silence for several seconds. $10.5 million, $4.2 million in compensatory damages for emotional distress, violation of constitutional rights, damage to reputation and loss of peace of mind. $6.3 million in punitive damages specifically calculated to send a message to federal immigration enforcement about the consequences of violating the Fourth Amendment. Elena broke down crying, surrounded by Daniel, her mother colleagues, and community members who had supported her through the ordeal. The verdict was more than money. It was vindication. It was validation. It was a federal jury telling the United States government that the Fourth Amendment matters, that constitutional rights are real, and that violating them carries consequences. All 4 agents were terminated. Miller faced federal criminal charges for deprivation of rights under color of law, though he eventually pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and received probation. ICE announced comprehensive policy changes, mandatory warrant requirements for residential entries, supervisor approval for all home searches training on Fourth Amendment protections, and creation of a constitutional compliance division. But for Elena, the impact went deeper than policy changes. She used part of her settlement to establish a legal defense fund for people whose Fourth Amendment rights were violated by federal agents, providing free representation to those who couldn't afford it. She became a national voice on constitutional rights, speaking at law schools, training sessions, and community forums about the importance of knowing and asserting your rights. The doorbell footage became a training tool in law schools and civil rights organizations, a perfect example of how to assert Fourth Amendment rights and why those rights matter. And in Phoenix, Elena Ramirez's case became a landmark, a reminder that the Constitution protects everyone equally, that federal agents aren't above the law, and that sometimes standing in your doorway and refusing to back down is the most powerful act of citizenship possible. If you believe the Fourth Amendment should protect all Americans from government overreach, that federal agents should face serious consequences for illegal home invasions, and that constitutional rights are only as strong as our willingness to defend them, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Tomorrow, we have another story that proves knowing your rights can be the difference between justice and injustice, because the truth captured on cameras and defended in court has the power to hold even the federal government accountable.